What if I told you some of the most creative batshit sci-fi films of the 1980s weren't originals, but shameless knockoffs that somehow pulled off genius? Hollywood called them cash grabs. We call them misunderstood masterpieces. Buckle up, because these rip-offs didn't just copy, they outcopied the originals. Battle Beyond the Stars, 1980. Forget Star Wars? It took a low-budget B-movie with a shoestring crew and Robert Vaughn in a feathered cape to prove space operas didn't need Skywalker-level budgets. Produced by Roger Corman on a laughable $2 million budget, this film stitched together Akira Kurosawa's Seven Samurai, Flash Gordon aesthetics, and a synth-heavy score by James Horner. The magic? It hired a young James Cameron as production designer. Yes, that James Cameron, building miniature ships out of soda cans and scrap metal. Critics called it Saturday morning serial sci-fi. But fans saw something else, scrappy ambition. It grossed over 13 million worldwide, proving that even knockoffs could launch future legends. The cast included Sybil Danning as a warrior queen, so magnetic she stole every frame, and a pre-famed John Saxon chewing scenery like it was bubblegum. Battle Beyond the Stars didn't just mimic, it remixed, and in doing so, became a cult blueprint for DIY sci-fi for decades. Android, 1982. You think Blade Runner owned the android noir genre? Try this claustrophobic philosophical pocket rocket shot in 9 days for under $1 million. Set almost entirely on a decaying space station, Android follows a lonely synthetic boy questioning his creator. Sound familiar? But here's the twist. The film weaponizes its limitations. With only 4 main actors and 1 set, director Aaron Lipstadt turns confinement into tension. Klaus Kinski's son, Nikolai, plays the android with eerie vulnerability, while Klaus himself was supposed to co-star but bailed last minute, forcing a rewrite that actually improved the script. Critics dismissed it as Blade Runner's baby brother, but Roger Ebert gave it a rare nod, calling it surprisingly thoughtful. The film's score, composed on analog synths, echoes Vangelis, but carves its own melancholic groove. The Last Starfighter, 1984. Sure, it borrowed the kid pulled from Earth into galactic war trope, but The Last Starfighter didn't just rip off Star Wars, it leapfrogged into the digital age before anyone else. While other films used hand-painted matte shots, this was the first to rely entirely on CGI for its space battles, thanks to a fledgling tech called the Cray XMP supercomputer. The result? Ships that moved with fluid, weightless precision, years before the industry caught up. The plot's arcade to Armada premise felt fresh because, well, arcades were the new frontier. Critics sneered at its earnestness, but audiences, especially teens, saw themselves in Alex Rogan, the trailer park hero who becomes a cosmic ace. The film tanked in theaters, but exploded on VHS, becoming a rental staple. Even Steven Spielberg reportedly called it the real deal during a private screening. And that iconic Gunstar fighter, designed by Ron Cobb, who also sketched the Millennium Falcon. So, yeah, this ripoff wasn't copying legends, it was hiring them. Metal Storm, The Destruction of Jared Sin, 1983, 3D glasses, desert planets, and a mystical crystal MacGuffin on paper, Metal Storm screams Star Wars meets Dune on a budget. But this weird, sweaty, neon-drenched oddity carved its own niche by going full pulp. Shot in the blistering heat of California's Vasquez Rocks, yes, the same spot as Star Trek's original series, it weaponized its cheapness with surreal production design. Think Mad Max meets Heavy Metal Magazine. Director Charles Band, king of B-movies, loaded it with practical effects that still hold up. Stop-motion sentinels, latex-faced mutants, and a villain who communicates through floating hologram skulls. Critics roasted it as incoherent, but cult fans praised its fearless absurdity. The 3D release was a flop, but home video saved it, especially when viewers realized you didn't need glasses to appreciate its bizarre charm. Fun fact, the synth score was composed in under a week, yet it's eerily atmospheric, echoing Tangerine Dream, but with more grit. Metal Storm wasn't trying to be smart, it was trying to be cool, and in the 80s, that was enough. The Ice Pirates, 1984. Imagine Star Wars if it was directed by a drunk pirate who'd just watched Flash Gordon and Monty Python back to back. That's The Ice Pirates, a delirious, raunchy space romp that parodied the genre while sneaking in legit sci-fi ideas. Water as currency? Check. Time dilation side effects? Yep. Complete with a scene so weird it was cut from most TV versions. Made by the same team behind Conan the Barbarian, it cost $10 million and looked like it cost $30, thanks to elaborate sets and rubber alien prosthetics that actually moved. Critics called it juvenile, but Roger Corman himself admitted it was one of the few comedies that worked in the sci-fi space. The film flopped hard in the US, but became a phenomenon in Europe and Latin America, where its slapstick translated perfectly. Even today, fans quote its absurd one-liners, "We come in peace, shoot to kill." And that zero-gravity sex scene everyone talks about, it was actually conceived as satire, mocking sci-fi's obsession with gravity-defying romance. The Ice Pirates didn't just copy tropes, it mocked them into oblivion. Trancers, 1984. Blade Runner meets time travel noir meets punk rock. Trancers somehow fuse all three into a neon-soaked detective story, where the bad guys aren't aliens. They're hypnotized zombies controlled by a psychic punk named Whistler. Set in a rotting future Los Angeles, it stars a baby-faced Jeff Lieberman as Jack Death, a cop who chases killers through time by possessing his own ancestors. Sounds insane? It is, and that's why it works. Made for under $400,000, it used real downtown LA alleys and repurposed car parts for its dystopian aesthetic. Director Charles Band insisted on practical effects, so every trancer had twitching eyes and jerky movements filmed in one take. Critics ignored it, but sci-fi mags hailed it as a B-movie with brains. It spawned 5 sequels and influenced everything from The Terminator to Looper. Even better, young Danny Bilson co-wrote it while working as a waiter. Trancers proves that originality isn't about ideas, it's about execution, and this one executed with a chainsaw grin. Space Hunter. Adventures in the Forbidden Zone, 1983. Columbia. Pictures threw $11 million at this Star Wars Mad Max hybrid and got a weirdly compelling mess. Starring Peter Strauss as a grizzled scavenger and Molly Ringwald, yes, that Molly Ringwald, as a psychic teen. It's a post-apocalyptic safari through radioactive wastelands ruled by a cyborg sorceress named Overdog. The real star? The practical creature design, Overdog alone took 6 puppeteers to operate and nearly gave the crew heat stroke during desert shoots. Critics panned it as style over substance, but audiences loved its gonzo energy. The film bombed in the US, but cleaned up in drive-ins and international markets, especially Japan. Fun fact, its 3D release was one of the last gasps of the 80s 3D craze, and director Lamont Johnson fought studio execs to keep the depth effects subtle. Even today, its junkyard meets cosmos aesthetic feels oddly prescient. Mad Max, Fury Road, owes it a debt. Space Hunter wasn't a copy. It was a collision of genres that somehow stuck. Night of the Comet, 1984. 2 Valley Girl sisters survive an extinction-level comet, cruise LA in pink convertibles, and blast zombie scientists with Uzis. If that sounds like a clueless alien mashup, you're not wrong. But Night of the Comet played it straight with a wink. Written and directed by Tom Eberhardt, it used real abandoned malls and silent streets to create eerie, post-apocalyptic beauty on a micro-budget. The comet's red dust just dyed cornstarch. The zombies? Actors covered in gray makeup and told to moan softly. Critics called it silly, but feminist film scholars later hailed it as a rare 80s action film with women driving the plot, literally and narratively. It grossed over $14 million, proving that girl power and sci-fi could coexist. The synth soundtrack by Sparks, underrated genius. And that ending, where they find other survivors via ham radio, feels hopeful in a genre obsessed with doom. Night of the Comet didn't rip off. It refreshed the apocalypse. The Hidden, 1986. Alien body snatchers meet Lethal Weapon in this gritty, leather-jacketed thriller that feels more like a cop drama invaded by sci-fi. An extraterrestrial parasite hops from body to body, cranking rock music and stealing sports cars while LAPD detectives chase it through smog-choked streets. Made for under $3 million, it used real police advisors and shot on location, giving it a docu-realism most sci-fi avoids. Critics compared it to Invasion of the Body Snatchers, but director Jack Shoulder insisted it was about addiction, using sci-fi as metaphor. Kyle MacLachlan, fresh off Dune, plays the FBI agent with eerie calm, while Michael Nuri's cop delivers one of the decade's most underrated performances. The film flopped in theaters, but became a VHS cult hit, with Tarantino citing it as influence for Pulp Fiction's tone. The creature effects, designed by Kevin Yeager, were so good they got reused in A Nightmare on Elm Street 3. The Hidden didn't copy tropes, it weaponized them with emotional weight. My Science Project, 1985. Ferris Bueller meets quantum physics. Close. This high school comedy follows a slacker who accidentally unleashes reality-warping chaos using a Cold War relic from a surplus store. While it borrows the teen saves the world arc, it leans into absurdist sci-fi, time loops, floating furniture, and a janitor who might be Einstein. Produced by Disney but too weird for mainstream success, it bombed hard despite a killer cast, including a young Fisher Stevens and Dennis Hopper as a conspiracy theorist teacher. Yet its heart and practical effects won over nerds. The time warp sequences used in-camera tricks, not CGI, making them feel tactile and strange. Critics called it messy, but fans loved its DIY spirit. The film's synth score by Alan Pasqua is criminally overlooked. And that message about Cold War paranoia? Way ahead of its time. My Science Project wasn't a ripoff. It was a rebellion disguised as a goofball comedy. The Philadelphia Experiment, 1984. Based on a real urban legend, yes, the U.S. Navy did allegedly teleport a ship in 1943. This film took conspiracy theories and fused them with time travel, romance, and existential dread. 2 sailors vanish during a WD-83 radar test and reappear in 1984 Nevada, hunted by military agents and slowly dematerializing. Shot on a modest budget, it used haunting sound design and minimalist effects to sell its sci-fi horror. Critics dismissed it as cheesy, but the public ate it up, grossing over $24 million. Its success sparked actual congressional inquiries into Navy secrecy. True story. The film's emotional core, Michael Paré's sailor trying to reunite with his love across 40 years, gave it surprising depth. Even today, UFO forums cite it as evidence. The Philadelphia Experiment didn't just borrow from history, it rewrote it with heart and static electricity. V, 1983. Okay, it's a miniseries, but it played like a movie event and deserves a spot. When lizard-like aliens arrive in flying saucers offering peace, humanity celebrates, until their reptilian faces are revealed. Sound like Independence Day? V predates it by over a decade and packs more political punch. Written during the Reagan era, it's a direct allegory for fascism, collaboration, and media manipulation. The resistance heroes weren't soldiers. They were school teachers, journalists, and teenagers. Critics hailed it as the Holocaust in space, and it drew record-breaking ratings. The practical effects, especially the unmasking scene, traumatized a generation of kids. It spawned sequels, a reboot, and even influenced real-world activism. V wasn't a ripoff. It was a warning disguised as entertainment, and it hit harder than any blockbuster. Eliminators, 1986. Ninja robots, riverboats, and a girl who controls machines with her mind. Eliminators is the ultimate kitchen sink sci-fi flick. Made by Charles Band's Empire Pictures. It cost under $1 million and looks like it cost $5. But its charm lies in sheer audacity. A cowboy cyborg teams up with a psychic girl and a grumpy scientist to stop a madman from weaponizing time. The robot suit was so hot, the actor lost 10 pounds during filming. Critics called it laughable, but fans loved its Saturday morning cartoon energy. The film's climax, inside a jungle temple with laser-shooting idols, feels like a video game cutscene years before games could do it. Eliminators didn't try to be smart, it tried to be fun. And in the 80s, that was revolutionary. The Quiet Earth, 1985. New Zealand's answer to the Omega Man, this haunting drama follows a scientist who wakes to find himself alone after a global energy experiment backfires. No monsters, no explosions, just one man unraveling in silence. Shot in stark black and white landscapes, it's more psychological horror than sci-fi. Yet its themes of guilt and isolation echo louder than any alien invasion. Made for Peanuts, it won international awards and influenced films like 28 Days Later and I Am Legend. Critics called it poetic, and Stephen King listed it as a favorite. The final shot, a man walking toward a glowing sun, remains one of cinema's most ambiguous endings. The Quiet Earth didn't copy apocalypse tales. It stripped them bare and asked, what if the real monster is your own mind? So, was imitation really the sincerest form of flattery in 1980s sci-fi? Or did these so-called rip-offs actually push the genre forward while the originals played it safe? Drop your take in the comments. Which of these deserves a remake, and which should stay buried in VHS history? And here's the real question. When a copy has more soul than the source, is it still a copy? Let's fight about it below.